Hello again, all you lovely witches and seekers. It's Ryan again with Dark Winter Moon. And for those of you who are returning, welcome back. And for those of you that are new to my channel, welcome. I created this channel in order to discuss and share my knowledge about all things magical and witchy. And today, what I wanted to talk about is ritual cakes and ale, and also extend that into a brief discussion about offerings. So how about we get started? Cakes and ale is one of my favorite parts of ritual. So let me kind of break down what cakes and ale are. So you can think of cakes and ale like an offering, but not only is it an offering to the powers that be that you have called into your ritual space with you, it's also an offering to yourself. Cakes and ale normally falls in the ritual after you've done the big portion of the ritual, the great magic that you came together to create, the great honoring and communing with deity. So this generally takes a lot out of you, both physically and mentally and spiritually. And so cakes and ale are a way to replenish your energy and kind of center you back into your body and get you prepared to re-enter the physical realm after your ritual. Cakes and ale is a momentary pause in the ritual where you can kind of commune with deity and with those that you're working in ritual with. And it usually happens right before the final closing portion of the ritual. So, what are considered appropriate items to use for cakes and ale? Well, really the sky's the limit. Generally, I have used bread type items. It could be cupcakes, it could be actual cake, it could be cornbread, it could be a loaf of bread, could be cookies. There's lots of options depending on what you feel intuitively and what matches your ritual and what you're wanting to accomplish. And what is ale? Ale is any sort of drink. So generally, I use an alcoholic beverage, though that's not necessary. It really just depends on the group you're working with and their preferences around alcohol or not alcohol. So as far as alcohol though goes, in my practice, in my opinion, it's a very important part of ritual. Alcohol, I consider one of the gifts of the gods. Fermentation is a beautiful magical act and a wonderful creative process that humanity has been doing a long time. And so there's a lot of magic in alcohol itself. But like I said, it's not necessary. It depends on your comfort level. It depends on what your personal preference is. And bread, like baking, those sorts of items are also magical. You know, yeast is used in that process of creating bread. A lot of care and skill goes into baking and creating bread type items. So there's a magical component to those items themselves, and I think that's why we use them in ritual. And in the past, when I was working with a coven, one of my favorite cakes type items that we did for Beltane was we would use a glazed banana and a glazed donut and a banana, and we would stick the donut on the banana in order to symbolize the great rite or the union of the goddess and god. So, and it was always a very fun cakes and ale because everyone, of course, was making lewd noises and going, ooh, ah. So yeah, you can make it fun and you can make the food applicable to the rituals that you're doing and the magic you're doing. So what I really haven't talked about yet are the offering components of cakes and ale. So it's very important to bless the cakes and ale before they are consumed and to give a portion of those to the powers that you have called forth in the ritual. So generally what that looks like is one person in the group will place their hands over the cakes, for instance, and one will place their hands over the ale, and they'll magically charge them as they're saying a blessing. That blessing could be something as simple as, I bless these cakes and ale for the sustainment of our natural bodies and am thankful for the good work of the earth and the good work of the hands that have brought it forth. And then you give a portion to the powers that be. Generally, what I do in that case is I throw a chunk of the bread or the cake the into the woods or into the air and and let it fall on the ground and say to the gods and then to the ancestors and to the good peoples or to the good fairies, just to honor the spirits of place and of land, to honor my own ancestors and to honor the gods that are present. And pretty much you do the same thing with the ale. You bless it in whatever way seems appropriate to you, keeping in mind and holding in your heart the care and work that went into bringing it forth, and then give a small portion to the powers that be. And then you pass it around and you all partake together in sort of a group communion experience, communion with a lowercase c, of course. And you share in that. And usually this is a time to kind of talk and just maybe frolic a little bit, enjoy each other's company. And then once you're finished with the cakes and ale period, then you usually close the ritual. So kind of a funny and tragic story about not doing this portion properly I would like to share with you is one time, again with my coven, we had brought an entire case of beer to ritual in preparation for after ritual festivities. And we had failed to give an offering to the powers that be as part of our ritual. Somehow we missed it, we forgot it. And as we were leaving, randomly, seemingly for no reason, though in retrospect I know what the reason is, we lost the entire case of beer. The bottom just fell out of it and every single bottle broke on the ground. And so that was a lesson. It's very important to honor deity, especially deities that really like beer. I don't honestly remember which deities we had worked with in that ritual, but the moral of the story, or the point, is that make sure that if you call on beings in ritual and you all are partaking in a ritual cakes and ale, that you also give the gods and the powers that be their due. It's just polite. You've asked them to come and join you in your ritual and to help you with your magic, and yet you're not going to give them a portion of the goodies that you are giving to yourself. So yeah, sometimes the gods will take their due anyway. So just remember that. So how does all of this apply to offerings in general? So often when I do a magical spell, especially if I've set up an altar and I'm calling on a specific power or deity, I will leave an offering to them, sometimes more than one. And now that can be cakes and ale, or it could be another item that's not perishable like that. But the point is that it's done mindfully. It's done as a way to honor and thank deity and the powers that you're calling upon to help you in your magical work. As many of you know, for example, I am a follower of Apollo, and so often I will leave an offering of white wine for him or an offering of honey for him as a thank you and as a way to show my appreciation and further my connection with himself, bless his wisdom. And as far as doing it for a spell that I'm casting, let's say that I wanted to do a love spell and I wanted to call on Aphrodite, bless her wisdom, for that love spell. Oftentimes I will leave her chocolates as a thank you. And there's something about this act of giving to deity and giving of yourself in some way, something precious and important to you, in this case chocolate, that facilitates the spell, facilitates the relationship with deity, and enhances the magic and power of the connection and the process that you're going through to create your spell. And that brings me to, I guess, probably my final point, that is important, that the offering that you give in some ways is a sacrifice. And I don't mean like slaying an animal, gods forbid, or drawing blood to give as an offering. I'm talking about, it has to mean something to you. It has to be valuable to you in some way, because if it's not, what does that mean? If you're just like flip and you don't really care about the offering you're giving, it's not something that you enjoy or like, why would the deity? appreciate that? And why would you set up that sort of magical exchange between the two of you without giving something that actually means something to you in order to receive something that means something to you? So that's really it in a nutshell. As always, I appreciate you all for watching and listening. I love your comments. I read them all and I respond to them all. I appreciate your likes. Any way that you can support my channel if you find this valuable is greatly appreciated. Maybe that's subscribing. Maybe that's liking and or checking out my other videos. Maybe that's checking out my Patreon linked below and joining that. Whatever it is, I appreciate it. And I appreciate you all. And I hope this has been valuable to you. And I wish you all a blessed weekend. Blessed be. And I love you all. Mwah.